when I founded Soccer Parenting 7 years ago, uh, the connections that I was having to coaches were largely around this idea of, oh, wow, you're taking on the parents. Like, if you're going to take on the parents, then let me buy you a beer because I don't want to do that. And it's shifted from that sort of mentality to this wonderful mentality of coaches now coming to me here at the convention where we are, where there's coaches everywhere, and being genuinely curious and wanting to learn more and wanting to implement this concept of parent engagement more and rethink the coach-parent dynamic and understand where those boundaries need to be.
Welcome to the Cutting Edge Coaching Podcast, where we believe coaches are some of the most important teachers and leaders in the world, and they deserve to be supported. I'm your host, Luke Gromer, and every week we're bringing you conversations with coaches, experts, and leaders from across sports that will give you practical ideas and strategies that you can apply in your coaching to develop high-performing teams and high-character people. Coaches, I'm excited to welcome Skye Eddy to the podcast. You'll hear a little bit more about Skye's background in soccer, coaching, and coach education in the interview, but she has a wealth of experience and knowledge that she brings to this conversation. She's the founder of Soccer Parenting and the Sideline Project, which are efforts to improve parent engagement and support in soccer and beyond. In this conversation, we talk about effective parent engagement, building trust with parents, the 3 types of sideline behaviors, and what to do when parents won't get on board with positive behavior from the sidelines or stands. Like always, if you enjoyed this episode and want to grab a copy of the free podcast notes, just go to cuttingedgecoach.com/podcast or click the link in the show details to download a free PDF from this episode or any episode of the podcast. And coaches, don't forget to check out summercoachingseries.com to learn more or get access to all 12 of the sessions with coaches and experts from across sports that will give you tons of practical ideas you can apply in your coaching. Learn more or get access at summercoachingseries.com. And one note about this episode before we hop in. This conversation with Skye was recorded live at a coaching convention, so there may be a bit of background noise at times, but we did our best to edit the audio to bring you the highest quality possible. Now to my conversation with Skye Eddy. Enjoy the episode. Coach is really excited to welcome Skye Eddy to the podcast today. Skye, thanks so much for joining me, and would love if you would just start off and give us a brief bio of your experiences coaching and in sport, as well as what you're doing currently.
Sure, absolutely. To start with, Luke, thanks so much for having me here. I'm excited to dive into this today. I have been a coach since high school when I started doing personal training and individual training with the goalkeepers. So I'm a goalkeeper, and that sort of built into being a longtime director for Dr. Macknick and the #1 goalkeeper camps, and then Tony DeChico and Soccer Plus camps. And I coached collegiately, coached with our national team programs. I'm a B licensed coach from US Soccer and a grassroots coach educator for them now. And I'm coaching U10 girls. And I have to say, it's my absolute favorite. So I feel like after this long journey between all different levels and genders, I found what really speaks to me the most. And I've been really enjoying these last few years with these littles.
That's awesome. I actually last spring coached a U10 boys basketball team, and a big shift going from coaching 9th grade boys to 10-year-olds. But it was a ton of fun and a fun challenge too, because I realized, man, I thought I was a better coach than I am. I kind of suck at some of these things. Trying to teach 10-year-olds will expose you real quickly, and you'll realize, man, I've got to get way better at these things, or they are gone, and this is a mess really quick.
It's funny that, one, U10 boys and U10 girls are very different.
Sure.
Because I'm on the field a lot next to the U10 boys, and I'm like, wow, there's so much energy in a different way. They're just experiencing life a little bit differently than girls at that age. But it does force you or encourage you to sort of dive deep into how you're communicating, the language you're using, what you're trying to express. I think that, for me, coaching at this level has really challenged me to think about soccer in its most basic form and what's most important, and just to see the light bulbs go off with these girls when they, for the first time, do something like playing a through ball into space and understanding space for the first time, just seeing that joy with them, and that sense of wonderment as the game unfolds for them as they're learning has been wonderful.
Yeah, I love that. And I totally agree with you there, especially when you're coaching at that younger level. You've got to really take some time to consider, okay, what matters, one, about the experience, but then even two, about the sport and the development, like what's actually essential for them to learn and grow in at this stage.
So true.
I want to focus on really the work you do with soccerparenting.com and parent engagement. There's a lot that goes into that, and probably a lot of feelings and emotions coaches experience when they think about parent engagement. But I'd love if you would just talk about maybe some areas where, as coaches, we really need to be more intentional in parental engagement and how we can be more effective with it.
Yeah. I'm so happy to have been witness to this shift that is thankfully starting to happen within the eco sport and youth soccer and in youth sports, where when I founded Soccer Parenting 7 years ago, uh, the connections that I was having to coaches were largely around this idea of, oh, wow, you're taking on the parents. Like, if you're going to take on the parents, then let me buy you a beer because I don't want to do that. And it's shifted from that sort of mentality to this wonderful mentality of coaches now coming to me here at the convention where we are, where there's coaches everywhere, and being genuinely curious and wanting to learn more and wanting to implement this concept of parent engagement more and rethink the coach parent dynamic and understand where those boundaries need to be. So it's been wonderful to see this very welcomed and needed, very necessary shift that's happened to this idea that parents can play a vital role, and they do play a vital role in a child's development. At Soccer Parenting, we believe that collaborative relationships with coaches, clubs, parents, and players is in the best interest of player development, and it's been phenomenal to see that play out.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that too, that it's becoming, people are more receptive to it, more curious about it, not, someone to offload this onto, but someone to learn from so that I can actually do this. And one of the things you mentioned in there is you talked about just rethinking or reframing parental engagement. What are some of those shifts, maybe mentally or in our philosophy, that coaches need to make to more effectively engage parents?
Yeah. Um, I often start my presentations when I'm standing in front of a group of coaches with a statement, youth sports is not working. What we've been doing is not working. And we all are clearly aware of the fact that parents can be a distraction, can cause us stress, especially if we've had just a really out of control parent. Historically, it's sort of, there's some trauma that we experience as coaches where we have difficult parents on our teams. And so the shift has been with this understanding and starting from the place of what we're doing isn't working, and uh, what's the ideal situation and how can we get there. And so what we know about parent engagement and what all the research says about effective parent engagement programs, this would be effective parent engagement programs in schools. Tons of research that schools that have effective parent engagement programs, the students in those schools are higher performing, they have more confidence, they stay in school longer, they don't miss school, they do their homework. The parents are largely empathetic to the needs of the teachers, and the teachers are more satisfied. So if we know that that's what happens with effective parent engagement programs in schools, and we can like layer that into what could happen within the sports world, kids staying involved in sport longer, kids having higher aspirations and motivation, not kids training on their own, playing on their own, finding that joy again, and finding this stronger sense of self-belief, and parents who are sympathetic to the needs of the coaches and the coaches that are more satisfied. Absolutely. That is solving so many of our issues in youth sport. And so, we believe at Soccer Parenting that this is a solution that we need to consider. And so a lot of the work we're doing is with coaches on helping them rethink the coach-parent relationship, reframe that. And, to do that, we need to give coaches skills, what we don't call soft skills. We call them essential skills about relationship building, about emotional intelligence, about self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, team management, like making sure that coaches have these skills, and foundational to the work that we're doing at Soccer Parenting is about trust and establishing trust in the coach-parent relationship. And foundational to that is self-trust and coaches believing in their ability to impact kids' lives, and having that sense of coach efficacy. And so, it's impossible to, you would think that the work we're doing at Soccer Parenting is all about parents. But really, the vast majority of the work that I do is coach education related to these concepts, because that's when we'll see the significant change.
Yeah, I think that's a great point there, especially just because as the coach, you're the gatekeeper of this experience, and you're the person that players are looking to and parents are looking to provide the experience. And I want to talk a little bit more about what you mentioned there towards the end of that, just the importance of building trust.
Mm-hmm.
Say more about that. How do we as coaches actually build trust with the parents of the athletes we coach?
Yeah, there's clear steps to how we do that. We follow through on what we say. So we set clear expectations for what parents can expect, and then we follow through on that. So for me, with the teams that I coach, I know that I am not going to send an email every week to the parents. So I don't set that expectation, because not fulfilling that would not help with establishing trust. So, following through, keeping our commitments. It is just having a sense of respect, listening to parents, being curious. Steps to establishing trust are being willing to have hard conversations in an honest way about maybe a child's performance, or, being able to find the ability to just have those clear conversations that, are foundational to trust. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tools and research about trust too, and I'm always encouraging coaches to dive into trust. And but like I said, the self trust is what's key to that, and that's working through our egos and coming to sport with the intentionality of impacting kids' lives, and it really being about the children.
Say a little bit more about that self-trust piece.
Mm.
How do we get to a place where we are confident really in our purpose and ability to impact lives as coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and we have built that self-trust
Mm-hmm.
to be able to
Yeah.
do it?
Yeah. Well, our ecosystem in sport is not set up to help this, because we're very often in the youth game isolated as coaches. We coach our teams, we have a match, a game, there's some sort of performance, and things happen. And sometimes we don't have other coaches to run ideas by, or to recap things, or, maybe something happened that your team lost a game that you really knew they should have won, or you felt like you didn't prepare well enough. You felt like you were off with some choices you made during the match. So, not having that sense of support doesn't help. And so, finding that circle will really help you with the sense of self-trust so that you get out of your head and all of these narratives that you have. I was just talking to a friend of mine here at the convention that presented earlier, and I was like, how did it go? And he told me like the 50 things that went wrong with it. And I'm like, not 50, but the 3 things that went wrong with it. And I'm like, well, what was right about it? And so, just being able to have those engaging conversations with other people will really help. I think journaling helps, being reflective, being clear on what your goals are so that you can then have clarity that you've met them or not will help us when it comes to that. And really, self-trust comes down to self-awareness, and self-awareness comes down to um, us being able to dive a little bit deeper and being able to ask ourselves, being clear on what our vision, our purpose is for things. And until we can define that, it's really hard to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said there about, having some sort of support system, some people that you're connected with that you can lean on is so important, especially when, like you said, our current structure is a pretty isolating structure where if you're coaching, usually you're kind of out there on your own little island. And then as well as what you were talking about with the narratives that, run through our mind as coaches, I think as coaches, we recognize it more so when it's happening to our players, maybe when they're in their own head and they
Yeah.
can't move beyond something mentally. But the same thing happens to us. And it's really important to be able to identify when that's happening or to have some other people that can help you identify it.
hmm
Hey, what are you telling yourself here? Is that how's that helping you? Well,
hmm
like what's that leading to?
hmm
I think that's such a key piece of that self-awareness, that support.
Just a simple reflection, after a training session or after a match, what were my objectives? Did I meet my objectives? Um, what went well? What didn't go well? What can I do better next time? Like just as simple as keeping a journal about that throughout the season and just jotting down some notes, being intentional about that can really go a long way to giving us clarity around that. And that helps us be intentional about what was I hoping to accomplish. Like maybe what you were hoping to accomplish was interactions with specific players. Like I want to spend time with Callie and making sure that I boost her confidence in this session because I know she struggled in the match, or I want to check in with these players. So it doesn't even have to be about the X's and O's. Really, our real impact is in this connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to shift a little bit now.
Mhm.
I think it's definitely connected to what we've been talking about with parental engagement is a big piece of it. But I know one of the other things you're involved in is the Sideline project. And I would love if you would just share a little bit about what that is and why it's so important.
Absolutely. Well, we all know that like parents are an issue that we need to try to address. And the other thing that's so clear for us as sports coaches is that we're so aware that the sidelines or the court, whatever capacity of sport you're competing in, and whatever that field or court might be, that they're out of control. And there are some interventions that are out there for that. We'll have silent play days where parents can't talk, or the team manager will walk around with a bag of lollipops, and the parent that's too chatty, they'll give them a lollipop and tell them to suck on it. Like these are interventions that are make us think a little bit, or might pull us back in that moment. But what we've failed to do as a sporting structure is actually educate parents about sideline behavior. And so at the Sideline Project, we sort of bucket, if you will, behavior and sideline behavior into 3 areas: supportive, distracting, and hostile. And we go in and we define what these various behaviors look like. And once parents understand what we find, once parents understand the difference between supportive behavior and distracting behavior, I mean, we all know the hostile behavior, and that's pretty identifiable. But what parents are often confused about is they think they're helping when they're actually distracting and they're taking away from long-term cognitive growth, from the skill acquisition that is just about to happen when parents intercede and distract the child, talking to them in the middle of performance. It sometimes looks like it's helping. You say, throw the ball to Johnny, and they throw the ball to Johnny, and Johnny has a breakaway, and your team scores, and you think, oh, I'm so glad I said that. But what would have happened if you didn't say that? And what learning moment did you take away from your child from that? So as parents learn, and coaches, I mean, the Sideline project's for parents, coaches, for everyone. As we learn the differences between those three types of behavior, then we're able to identify it, be more intentional on the sidelines about what our behavior is. And so for a parent to be able to say, oh, that was distracting, then we're getting somewhere. So if a parent can self-identify behavior because they now understand and have clarity around it, that's what the movement's about.
I love those three words: supportive, distracting, or hostile. And I think we would all agree we would love to have an army of supportive parents at our games. And obviously that's the ideal, but like we talked about, obviously not the reality, or Sideline project wouldn't even exist probably. The reality is that we have oftentimes a lot more distracting parents, like you were talking about there, and they don't realize the impact that it's having on their child's performance, or on the performance of the team. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit more. I mean, you talked about it's education, like we've got to educate them on what that's like. What should that look like from the coach? If I'm coaching a high school team or a youth team, how do I need to roll that out to parents? What do I need to provide to them to help them see this and embrace taking on the role of a supportive parent?
Sure. So the Sideline Project is a website, thesidelineproject.com. Parents and coaches can go on. You can watch a video to learn about this. So that's where we need to start with the actual education. There's also a 15-minute course that's available that just goes into much more detail than the 2.5-minute video, of course. It all starts with the coach initiating this. So what we want to have happen is the coaches will decide that sideline behavior is going to be a priority, and we're going to keep the emphasis on that. It's no different than a session, and when we're in the middle of coaching and we go into the session and we say, okay, the objective of this session is to focus on your first touch. Like, let's just say, and using a soccer as an example. So the focus of the session is going to be on first touch. And then we get into the session and we start giving coaching points about the run that's made or their defense, or like, oh, okay, I got to get back. I got to focus on first touch. Like, that's what we're trying to get out of this. And so being thoughtful with the Sideline Project with parents, like coaches need to say, this is going to be something that we work with this season. And so your first team meeting is talking about the importance of sideline behavior, and it's starting to frame it right from the beginning. The coaches need to use this vernacular of supportive, distracting, hostile. It needs to be commonplace within the team structures that you have. And then the parents watch this video, and then there's follow-up to the parents throughout the course of the season via the Sideline Project, or the coach can follow up, and the coach can register for a free season-long program that they have access to on the Sideline Project. And then my favorite thing that we're doing are what we call pregame huddles. So let's just think about what it feels like to be a soccer parent or a sports parent. And that there's a game or a match at 11 o'clock in the morning. So you think, okay, well, I'm going to wake my child up at 8:30 so that they can eat 2 hours before. And this is what we're going to have. Oh, I got to go to the store. I have to buy more eggs. Like, we go through all of these things to prepare our child and be ready. And then we give our child breakfast. We make sure they have the stuff. We get into the car. We're thinking, okay, I don't want to give them a pregame talk. I know they don't want to hear that from me, so I'm just not going to do that. And then we do it anyway. Like, we're consumed with that. We're looking in the rearview mirror to see how they look. Are they ready? So all of these things happen to us. And I'm talking about like level-headed parents are feeling this way. This is not like demonstrative of a crazy parent. Like, this is just a level-headed parent. This is just what parenting is. Like, parenting is hard in this day and age. And then what happens is we get to the field or the arena or wherever we're participating, and we put our chair down or sit on the bleachers and we watch every single minute of the warm up. And we're not watching the team. We're watching our child. Like our eyes are on our kid. Okay, do they look focused? I wish they'd move their bag. Did they put their shirt in the bag or is it next to the bag? We're thinking all about our kids. And so what the pregame huddle does is it's a moment right then where the coach interacts with the parents just before a game. And so it's a quick 1 to 2 minute meeting that the coach has with the parents. They walk over to the sidelines. The parents know that this is happening. The parents meet the coach because there's not a lot of time. We have to do this fast. There's no questions that are taken. It's pretty much like the sideline reporter putting the mic into the coach's mouth. Coach, what are you expecting today? As they're walking out to the field. And so the coach will talk about what they've been working on in training, give parents specific things that they can look for and celebrate if they see within the match based on what you've been working on in training. Might give information about the referee if they know they're a novice referee, or something about, like, I know we're playing our crosstown rival and last time we played, things got a little out of control. So I'm really just asking you to be really thoughtful. And then absolutely the coach in this pregame huddle gives a reminder about and uses the term supportive, distracting, and hostile. And what this does is it takes parents out of this mindset where they're thinking totally about themselves and their child. And it establishes a little bit of sense of solidarity amongst the parents and just breaks the cycle of intense focus. And coaches that are using the pregame huddle, you don't necessarily have to do it every game, or if it's a tournament weekend and there's 4 matches, you maybe only do it once a day. But the response that we've had from coaches who have implemented this has been really, really positive.
I love that. And practical, a couple minutes, but can totally pay off in the kind of culture environment you're trying to create for those young people and in the relationships that you have with those parents. It's
Yes.
right. Like, that's not the normal thing to do. When you do what's not normal, like, that catches people's attention. And so being intentional like that, doing something abnormal, but that all serves this greater purpose of, I'm trying to develop these young people here, and I need you on board with it. I think that's so huge. I have kind of one final question on this topic. What do we do with the parent that doesn't get on board?
That's always going to be the case. And historically, what's happened is that we've given that parent way too much energy and attention. In fact, that parent has been the result of focusing too much on that parent has been why coaches don't want to interact with parents, or why we've had these barriers up. And so the entire focus of the work that we're doing at Soccer Parenting and with the clubs, leagues that we're partnering with the Sideline Project is to stop spending so much time worrying about those parents and instead spend the majority of our time focusing on what we call the level-headed but stressed parents. I would classify myself, even in all the work I'm doing, all the coaching I'm doing, all the playing that I did in my career, I would classify myself as a level-headed but sometimes stressed parent. And that's who we need to be giving the attention to. And so what we do with the parents that are out of control, we instead give our energy, our time, which is limited as coaches, how much reserve we have, we give it to the parents. And let's change the narrative of what's happening on the sidelines. Let's shift the energy that's happening on the sidelines away from the out of control parents and really give the focus to the parents that are open and ready to support, encourage, and make youth sports better.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick story from that U10 basketball team I told you I coached last spring. Had a parent, a dad of one of the boys who was very distracting at games, pretty much constantly trying to coach his kid from the stands or while the kid was on the bench. And I'm sure you've experienced it. It starts to infect your whole environment. And also it just ruins the experience for that young person. Like, I could see it. I could see how much it was damaging this young person and his performance but the parent couldn't see it.
Mhm.
Like they're just like you're talking about, they're stressed.
Yeah.
And like I ended up trying to have a conversation with his dad where I said, I didn't maybe I needed some of the language that you're talking about, but where I just said, and I had said early on in the like kind of parent informational meeting, like please refrain from coaching your
Mhm.
kids from the stands, and here's why. And I just had to say, like, I'd ask you to stop doing this. It was a really uncomfortable
Mhm.
conversation,
Yeah.
and he was pretty defensive, honestly.
Yeah.
And he didn't totally stop. It got a little bit better.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's really hard
what
when that
you're
happens.
doing there, though, ultimately is you're establishing trust because you're having difficult conversations. Like difficult conversations do that. And while that parent might not have a total behavior change in that moment, in that season, like they'll reflect on that. They'll learn from their kids and the response that their children give them over the course of their playing, youth playing career. But what you're really also doing is establishing trust with all the other parents because you're protecting the learning environment for their children, and that matters. And we need to have the skills and the abilities to have those conversations. I love the fact that you said, like maybe if I had better language or thought about this, like this is what we're trying to do is frame what is generally a very fragmented response, that this coach responds this way, this coach responds that way. Of course, we all have our personalities and respond, but what if we had very clear standards that went across all sport? And we believe that that ideal sideline does exist, and that with the right education, with the right energy about it, we can provide our children with an exceptional learning environment in which they'll feel the sense of inspiration and wonderment that is so often only found through youth sports.
Yeah. And, we could, I'll just throw this one comment in here before I ask you a few rapid fire questions. It also has to be modeled by the coach on the sideline. Like this
Yes.
is all a moot point if the coach is going berserk on the sideline during the
Absolutely.
game.
Yeah.
Like like if that's you, don't even try to shape this ideal sideline of supportive people. If we can't model that appropriate sideline behavior, emotional control, being supportive as the coach, then we can't ask the parents to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you see out of control coaches and then you look at the parent sidelines, and I don't have any like scientific data on this, and we haven't done any specific research on it, but I think it's safe to say that a coach that doesn't have self-awareness or self-management during a match and is screaming and out of control, that the parents on those sidelines of that team will likely be more so that way as well.
For sure. 3 quick rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is this. The most fun part of coaching is?
The player's joy.
I love it. I wish I would have known blank before my first coaching experience.
More about learning, the science of learning.
Say more about that.
I wish I understood that, like about practice design or skill acquisition. More starting from the game and game moments to teach instead of trying to facilitate and structure this training, this learning, using the game more and reflecting on the game and using those game moments within training for kids. That's really reflective of goalkeeping too. I did so much goalkeeping training over the years. And once we became more, it made it more like looking like the game, bringing in field players, doing things like that. That's when the learning really happened. That was also part of like a shift that's happened in coaching over the course of my coaching career in the last 30 years. That's also happened. But I feel like I could have had a greater impact in my 20s, absolutely, if I understood that better.
Yeah, absolutely. Last one. I know I'm successful as a coach when?
I come back to joy or inspiration, the players return for another season, or when I've got it. I think I'll say it this way. When we lose a game and everyone's okay.
Yeah,
It doesn't feel like an insurrection's going to happen.
Yeah. That's good.
Or the kids still are, they can see what went well.
They still have the joy.
We can focus on that. Yeah.
That's really good. Well, Skye, this has been awesome. Before we get out of here, just share with the listeners where they can connect with you and learn more about the work that you do.
Absolutely. Well, you can find the Sideline Project at thesidelineproject.com, and all our contact information is there. We're building that out and excited about that. And then you can hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, everything's at Soccer Parenting. And so, DMs are open there, and you have a lot of interactions with coaches on that channel.
Awesome. Skye, thanks so much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Luke. This was really fun.
Coaches, thanks for listening to this episode, and thanks to Skye for joining me. As always, if you enjoyed the episode and want to grab a copy of the free podcast notes, just go to cuttingedgecoach.com/podcast or click the link in the show details. Here are my 3 takeaways from this episode. Number 1 is a quote from Skye. Parents play a vital role in a child's development. I think it's so important for us to keep that at the forefront of our mind. If we want to help the people in front of us reach their potential as athletes and people, we need to recognize the vital role that their parents play. But I'd argue that coaches should be intentional about it from the youth level through the collegiate level. It'll just look different at each age and stage. Number 2 are the 3 types of sideline behavior that Skye shared: supportive, distracting, and hostile. I think this is really simple and helpful language to use with your parents. I truly believe most parents want to be that supportive parent. Many are just unaware that what they are doing is distracting to their athlete. And like Skye said, it really is up to us as coaches to provide some education to our parents for the sake of the experience of the young people we're coaching. And number 3 is the pregame huddle idea that Skye shared. Again, this may look different in different contexts, but I think the idea can be applied and adapted to pretty much any context. Either go have a brief meeting with parents before your weekend game start, or do a similar thing in an email the day of a game or in your weekly email. The 2 keys that Skye shared were to highlight for parents what you've been working on in practices that they can be watching for, and remind them of those types of sideline behavior, and just ask them to be supportive. I think it's really powerful when we just take the time to ask. And hey, don't forget to check out summercoachingseries.com to learn more or sign up for our 2022 summer coaching series. You can get access to the video replays, podcast-only replays, coaching notes, and more at summercoachingseries.com. I hope to see you this summer. Thanks for listening to the podcast.